So thanks for your attention during the wonderful panels and remarks and speeches that we've had thus far on the event this afternoon. It's been such a stimulating and exciting time to hear the personal experiences and the analysis and real data around diversity in tech and in the workplace. And we have another stellar lineup of really inspiring entrepreneurs and innovators here for you this afternoon. Our moderator is AnnaLee Saxenian, who's the Dean of the UC Berkeley School of Information. And so I will turn it over to Anna.
Thank you so much, Camille. It's really great to be here and to see all the women in the audience, and especially to meet the women on this panel. I am going to tell an anecdote quickly. I'm going to introduce these women, and then I'm going to ask them to answer some questions. I just want to start by saying that I spent most of the 80s, late 70s and 80s, studying Silicon Valley, running around and talking to people who had started companies, studying entrepreneurs, studying venture capital. The only place I found women was in secretarial jobs or in nonprofits. So just the fact that I'm on the stage with 4 fantastic women like this is a huge step, a sign of how far we've come. We obviously have a lot further to go, but I want to just comment on the progress that we've made so far. Okay, to my far right, we have Joy Bonaguro, who is the Chief Data Officer in the City and County of San Francisco, and the first Chief Data Officer. The mission of Data San Francisco is to empower the use of data, transforming the way the city works through data. And Joy has spent more than a decade working at the nexus of public policy, data, design, and technology. I'm going to just give you the very important highlights, which is that she earned her master's from UC Berkeley Goldman School of Public Policy, where she focused on IT policy. Go Bears. To my immediate right is Mayumi Hiramatsu, who is the Vice President of Product Operations at Cisco. Her technology experience spans software engineering, cloud engineering, data center engineering, product security, and the Internet of Things at scale. In other words, she's very current. She's been working for several decades, actually now. She was one of those early people that I met in the 90s, I'm sure. Her 2016 engagements are wonderful. She is involved in Cisco's Women in Tech DevNet event, Tech Maker Leadership at Google. She's been Girls in Tech Catalyst Conference, IEEE Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference, and mentorship roles, including Berkeley's CalNerds Bergeron Scholars Program. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Mayumi. Okay, to my immediate right is Erin Summers. Erin is an engineer, software engineer at Oculus VR, otherwise known as virtual reality, and she's also the co-founder of wogrammer. I love the first sentence of her bio. She has built underwater robots, worked at NASA making sure planes don't fall out of the sky, was one of the first Insight Data Science Fellows, taught herself Android, and now builds virtual reality technology at Oculus. She has a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science from UC Berkeley. Yay. And she, in 2014, co-founded wogrammer. I had never heard of it. Have you heard of wogrammer? Yeah, very cool. A movement to celebrate the accomplishment of women engineers. Very, very good. She has shared the stories of over 150 women engineers on every continent, including Antarctica.
Wow.
Very good. And last but certainly not least, Rikky Muller, who is an assistant professor of EECS at UC Berkeley. Rikky, yay, go Cal, go Bears. Rikky is a co-director of the Berkeley Wireless Research Center and a core faculty member at the Center for Neural Engineering and Prostheses at Berkeley. She received her BS and MS at MIT and her PhD from, yay, Berkeley. She has been working on implantable medical devices and developing microelectronic systems for a neurological application. She is the co-founder of Cortera Neurotechnologies, a medical device company founded in 2013, where she held positions as CEO and CTO. She's received many fellowships and awards and was named one of the top 35 innovators under the age of 35 by the MIT Technology Review. Congratulations to all 4 of you. What a great panel. So I'm going to now ask each of my panelists to tell two brief stories. The first is an anecdote about why they love the work they do. And the second is another anecdote, positive or negative, about being a woman in your field. Do you want to start, Joy, or does anybody want to volunteer? We can go either way.
I'm happy to start, though I'm so not going to answer that first question. I hope that's not a problem.
That's fine. Go on. Tell us why.
I love my job, so I don't even feel like I need to talk about that. Happy to talk about that if people want to. You get to use data and technology to improve people's lives. What could be better? I think for this panel, it'd be more relevant to tell a story about how I got that job. A friend of mine, a fellow alumni from GSPP, texted me one day, and they're like, have you seen this job for Chief Data Officer for City and County of San Francisco? And I was like, well, no, I haven't. And they said, it looks like it was written for you. And so I looked at it, and I ended up applying. Didn't think I had a snowball's chance in hell, even though I felt more than qualified for the job. And that same person went and talked to the folks who were involved with the hiring and said, you know what, if this person applies, you need to give them a really close look. So right there, the importance of having that network became completely salient. On the flip side, little did I know there's this whole separate network that was happening where I wasn't supposed to get that job. That job had been created for another. Essentially, a network of folks in the industry had really strongly advocated for this role with the city, and in fact had sort of anointed their candidate and fully expected that candidate, who was a man who was completely qualified, to get it. And the only reason I got in the running was because my network helped get me in the running, and because the people who were doing the hiring weren't the same as the network that had sort of created the role and advocated for the role. Now, the other person that they wanted, that I later found out who was going to come into the role, totally qualified, would have done a great job in it. But the point is that for women to get into these kinds of roles, the networks end up being so, so important. And to this day, I'm still not a core part of that network that advocated for that role. They respect me, they like what I'm doing, but I am not in the club. And so probably when I move on, because I'm appointed by the mayor, someone from that club will end up taking over this role. And so it's my call out to, most of the women here today, I have not seen or met you. And so we really actually need to help each other expand our networks. And I think that's even more critical than the pipeline problems and the retention problems. It's those people get these roles through their networks. And I just find that they're not strong enough from what I've seen across women in this sector. Sorry.
Thanks. Great. Absolutely true, too. Every bit of it.
I can tell a good, bad story later.
OK. We'll come back to that. Yeah. OK. Would you like to share with us?
Yeah. You know, for me, I love my job. And you know, one of the things that I've done is I'm old enough to say that I was here and was one of the earlier adopters of web. So if you're old enough, you know that in the early 90s was when web really became sort of prominent. Until then, a lot of things were not. Like online banking did not exist, right? So at that time, I was working at Schwab. And I can tell you, this was kind of a new thing. Online trading was a new thing. Now we have E-Trade and Ameritrade and Schwab and whatnot. But back then, this was the first time we were going to do it. So you can imagine the challenge it took for us to figure out, well, what the heck is this online, web trading, and what do we need to do to actually make it happen? It was quite a challenge from a technical perspective, and that I love. And then came the cloud technology. And so I was actually at Microsoft at that time. Have you guys heard of Azure?
Yes.
Great. So the predecessor of Azure, the internal code was actually called Blue. Azure means blue, by the way. So I was on the Blue team, and we actually enabled a lot of these cloud technologies that cloud was not really much of a word back then, but it was really cool to go out there and figure this out. And now I'm learning a lot more on the electrical and mechanical engineers because my background is more software engineering, cloud engineering, so I can tie all this together and make it IoT technology, which I think is like the next big move, right? In fact, I was just commenting earlier, I think over at Davos, earlier in the year, they said this is the fourth industrial revolution. It's huge. Every single industry, everybody's actually trying to figure out how to go digitized and how to make IoT work for everything, every sector. So I think that's cool. So why do I love my job? I think it's really great that there's always a new challenge, something new coming up, and you get to be, if you like, you get to be in that forefront trying to figure it out. So if you like solving puzzles, I'm assuming many of you guys are here with degree in engineering or some sort of problem-solving degree. I think that would be a really great challenge. So that's the one thing that I always talk about. But the second thing that most people don't talk about, but I think is important, you get to work with smart people. Yeah. And that's really important to me. I almost get frustrated when I don't work with smart people in other sectors, because something that's so intuitive and we just kind of make a decision and move on can sometimes take longer if you don't work with the smart people who can actually challenge your ideas and come up with something new. So those are the two main reasons why I love what I do.
Awesome. So I'm going to tell one more anecdote that continues on before I pass it on to Erin and Rikky. So in doing this research, I did notice that Silicon Valley was really run by white guys network. It was really white guys. And then, I started to notice immigrants in the Valley. And I started to sort of try to understand, did they fit into those white guys networks? Did they work out of it? I didn't, by the way. It was curious. It's curious to me now that I didn't ask, where are all the women? But I didn't. But I found, literally hundreds and then thousands of Chinese, Indians, French. I mean, the immigrant population, Silicon Valley sort of sucked in immigrant talent from all over the US and then all over the world, really, because they came to graduate school in the US and then got sucked into the technology industry. And typically, it was the best and the brightest. Did they integrate into the social networks? This is sort of getting back to Joy's point about women needing their own networks. The way that the immigrants progressed, especially in the early decades, was by building their own networks. They built very powerful networks. The Chinese had very powerful networks. The Indians did. Now, over time, they had to assimilate also within companies like Cisco where they worked. So you don't shun the networks of the men, but you do. I mean, having your own network is a very powerful thing. And we've seen a lot of the immigrants who in the initial days would say to me, there's a glass ceiling, we're not going anywhere, suddenly become very successful. So I think there's a lot of power in women helping women in this field. Okay, Erin.
Hi. So why do I like what I do? So I love building things. I've always loved building things. And I work at Oculus, and I work on virtual reality, which is maybe the 5th industrial revolution, TBD. But it's so important to have different kinds of voices building this new technology. And to tell you a story, I almost, so Oculus is part of Facebook now, and I've been working at Facebook for 3 years, and I was looking at different teams to join. Periodically, people switch about every year and a half within Facebook. And I had been on ads and pages for 3 years, and I thought Oculus was really cool. But I saw it as this gaming device, and I like games. I play a lot of Candy Crush, but I don't necessarily identify as this stereotypical gamer person. I don't play games every day when I come home. And then I realized that I had a total advantage because I'm not like that. And there are a lot of people at Oculus who are like that, and I have a totally different perspective. The things that I like doing in VR are watching videos, going to different places, having these experiences, and I have a different perspective and a very unique, different voice, and that's why it's important, and it's also an advantage to your second question of being a different type of person in this industry, because we need all the different kinds of voices we can get. I mean, we're designing hardware that goes on your face, making sure it fits on everybody's face, making sure voice recognition works with all different kinds of voices, all different kinds of accents, and just making sure, when I put on Oculus, I don't want to see shooting games, fishing games, and slot machine games. I want to see videos. I want to be able to go to the Taj Mahal. I want to watch videos of my kids in VR. I want to be able to play awesome games that take me to different lands and places. And I have the opportunity to be very vocal about these sort of things and push the technology in the direction that I think it should go.
God, I can't underscore how important I think that is. Okay, Rikky.
Why do I love my job? For me, it's really simple, actually. I'm a very mission-driven person. I make medical devices that treat neurological conditions, monitor the brain, help study the brain, and advance neuroscientific research. And to me, that's everything I do is entirely motivated by that. Okay, both in my mission for commercialization and my mission for research here at UC Berkeley. So I'm just really, really passionate about changing patients' lives and improving quality of life for patients, curing disease. That's awesome. It in a nutshell. But I can't underscore enough, some of the things that I heard. I love solving interesting problems. I love working with absolutely brilliant people. And that on a daily basis absolutely motivates me as well. And there's no lack of brilliant people here at Berkeley that I get to interact with on a daily basis and amplify our ideas.
That's great. Sometimes I think about what's being built now. Artificial intelligence is like being built everywhere right now. How many women are involved in building the AI tools that we will be using in the next decade? It's a really important question for us to ask. But I'm going to turn the question to something that Erin suggested. What will it take, let me start with this one. How can we empower men to take more responsibility for recruiting women into technology? Any ideas about that?
Can I go?
Yes, please.
Because I just had this conversation. And
Good.
I'm glad there are actually men here, too. Kudos to you guys, because one time I went home, and I'm very passionate about trying to help women in technology. And one time my husband said, "Why do you always talk to the women audience? You should talk to the men, too." I said, "Gosh, you're so right." Obvious. So last week, I actually had this conversation with my management team. And I said, look, it requires every one of us to actually lean in, not women only. And the conversation I had, and this is a true story, is that, let's just face it, in Silicon Valley at least, most of the population happen to be men or white men. Right?
Right.
So what happens is, if you open a job rec, you're going to get a lot of resumes. I can tell you this year in January, I opened a rec, and hundreds of resumes came through, not a single female resume. So I actually went to my recruiter and I said, who was wondering, when are you going to start interviewing? And I said, your job isn't started until you actually bring me a female resume, a qualified one. Don't just bring me just any female resume, right? Because it required me to kind of push him to actually say, this is important, and diversity is important. Now, I can tell you, I'm sure all the women on the stage, and many of you would agree, I want to be treated fairly. I don't want any unfairness up or down. I just want to be treated fairly, give everybody a good chance. The problem is women don't always apply for the same job, even though they have the same qualification. And I know this from decades of being a manager. So I essentially had to tell the recruiter, I'm not starting until you actually bring me a female resume. He did, finally. Months. Yep. Actually. And that one didn't qualify, and I kept pushing for it while I actually at least started the conversation. It didn't work out for this particular role. It wasn't, I couldn't find a female applicant who was the best job. It happened to be a male. But I can tell you another story. When I was working at Microsoft, I did the same thing. And then I opened a rec, hundreds of resumes, and you wonder, where are all the women? And by then I had worked at eBay and PayPal and up and down the valley. So I knew some really awesome women. And so it took me to actually call them and say, look, you're much better than hundreds of people that are coming through this door. You should apply. And what I find is, this is stereotypical but true. Most women, if you can do 9 out of the 10 requirements, you probably say, oh, I'm not qualified. It's true. Yeah. Men, oh my God. I just opened this job rec, and people who are managers with 2 years of experience, when I wrote senior director, 10 years of experience, what gives? Why? You're not even qualified, but they still go for it. And so I was talking to the women leaders. I said, there's something to be said for that, right? To your point around go for it, right? You have to actually do both. So if you're looking for a job, you can't sell yourself short. Be humble, but don't sell yourself short, because it's sometimes our attitude that stops us. And then sometimes as a leader, as a manager, as a hiring manager, you got to go and reach out. And in that case, I was happy to say that one of the ladies that I called who actually applied, just absolutely qualified, did really well in the interview, and she became my successor. She's still at Microsoft. So it requires a little bit more of a oomph, because that population is smaller, combined with how we tend to be harder on ourselves. We have to change that mindset, I think, on both ends and help move this needle.
To add to that, there's actually, that's one step, is women leaning in and going for these roles that they may not necessarily feel qualified for. But there's also, if you're a man and you're writing a job role, you can change the language in it to make it friendlier to women. And there's actually this very awesome website called hiremorewomenintech.org, and it has a ton of examples and a ton of advice on and a ton of research on why it's important, how it actually works. So that is one thing that men and women can do to attract more women to these roles. And also, to speak to the question directly, like what can men do? It's awesome, the men who are here, that you're actually showing up and you're listening to these sorts of issues that are prevalent for women in tech. The CTO of Facebook, Mike Schroepfer, we call him Shrep, he goes to tons of women in tech events. He goes to Grace Hopper every year, and he feels so uncomfortable being the only guy in the room. And he talks about it, and it's like, yes, you actually get it. Like this feeling that I'm probably pretty. Sometimes it sneaks up on me, but I'm largely like kind of, it's just my life now, like being the only woman in the room. But I think it just a very like esoteric little value of them feeling uncomfortable and feeling otherness. Being the only one of their gender is huge, and it gives so much empathy. So I think there's a reaction for a lot of people, and they feel very dismal about hiring more women in tech. Oh, it's a pipeline problem. There just aren't enough people to hire. I can't do it. Just show up. Go to like any, and it's not just women. It's like all types of diversity. Just go to an event where you're the only one of you and see what it feels like, and talk to the people. And like get some empathy. And so maybe the next time you hear say something bogus like, you know, women don't like being data scientists, you're like, that's not true. I just met like 5 of them. So that's some real.
We'll be hiring one.
All right. Apply, okay? Apply.
If I can, so my husband is a scientist. He's a neuroscientist, and he works at Genentech, was a postdoc here at Berkeley, and something he's noticed is a lot of the senior management in Genentech and the sciences are people who look a lot like him. He's a white male, not super tall, but you know, not short either, which is another thing, short person says. And so something he's noticed is that in meetings, people are very likely to give him credit for something that a female colleague has done. And so he is committed to stepping up and saying, oh no, that was Wei did that. That was, you know, so-and-so, that was Caroline. And so he self-polices for essentially when higher-ups do this. And this happens to women all the time. I'm sure all of us have had experiences where you've been in a meeting, you've proffered up an idea, suddenly when Jack says it, it's brilliant. And I mean, this has happened to me so many times, I just roll my eyes over it. So I think men stepping up more and taking responsibility for appropriate accreditation of thoughts and ideas, I think is really important. Another thing that I think is important is, bizarrely enough, my best mentors have been men. So I think more men not being afraid to mentor women, especially younger women, and whatever weirdness that might trigger for them. And they need to get over that because, you know, we don't all want to sleep with you. So I think, but I feel like, I'm sorry, I think it's an issue. And so I've had some men who've stepped up and mentored me and been amazing teachers and colleagues, and frankly, more so than women. I mean, I have a few stories about women who should have been my mentors who were frankly undermining me. And so I think, and we can come back to that sort of what I call, we need to live in the post-female scarcity world. We can talk more about that, but I think those are two big things men can do.
You married a good guy.
Oh, he's the.
I wish I could bring him to my dean's meetings.
I always say he's post-gender.
Yeah.
Post-gender, it's good.
You know, if I can add one more thing, it's kind of probably slightly off topic, but kind of interesting, is that right now most of my teams are not in the U.S. In fact, I was in Europe last week, and it's fascinating. How many of you guys are not born and raised in the U.S.? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, me too, by the way. I'm Japanese. It's fascinating because a lot of times we tend to think, wow, you know, diversity for women, but I go there and all the men want to participate because they feel like it's actually American, white, Silicon Valley, male culture, which is different than European. So it's funny that even though I think I'm a minority, like Asian female in technology, I'm really a minority. But I go out and I connect with many of these international folks who actually feel the same way. And these are male, white guys, but they're European or potentially Asian, and there's a cultural gap that they also see. So I think we can also broaden some of these conversations because there's actually a lot bigger pie of folks who want to participate and also struggling to sort of assimilate with potentially a Silicon Valley culture.
Feeling like outsiders is a powerful thing for bringing people together, which is great, which is really great. Any comments on this, or should we move on? Okay. We're taking questions. Okay.
Anyone else has other questions? But
Okay, I have another question, but yes, I'm happy to take these as well. This one. What will it take for women to unabashedly take credit for our accomplishments? This is another problem. We sell ourselves short in the job process, but when we accomplish things, we're not out there boasting about it, or we're just being honest about the accomplishment.
Yeah. Just do it. Just
do
it now.
How does it make you feel to do it?
It's uncomfortable, but just do it. You have to do it. Like, this is something like, I've interviewed so many women engineers for wogrammer, and time and time again, they're like, oh, I helped with this, or I was part of a team. Like, I don't care about your team. I'm interviewing you. I'm putting a picture of only you on the internet. I'm promoting you. I'm celebrating you. Or if I'm interviewing a woman for work, it's like, oh, we did this. Like, who's we? There's like, I didn't help you, and you're the only other person in the room. Take credit for what you did, even if you worked on a team, especially if it makes total sense in the context. Of course, if you're with you worked on a robot together and you're all standing there, you're not going to be like, I built this by myself. And you would never say you built it by yourself, but just changing your language to make it centric around you, knowing what you're proud of, being able to take compliments, stop disparaging yourself. Women are I don't know why, I feel this too. It's super uncomfortable. I got on a stage in front of like 3,000 women at Facebook, Oculus, WhatsApp, and Instagram, and I was like, I'm proud of this, and to try to show it to them. It was so uncomfortable. But I wanted to show them that they could do it. So just do it. You have to do it.
I want to push back on that. I will say, like, I'm completely guilty of not being good at taking credit for things. But I think it's more that I always like to think of myself I'm in beta and I can always get better. But to this question of taking credit, I think, and maybe this is optimistic or overly ambitious, I think we need to change this narrative of these magical individuals who accomplish everything and they're brilliant and let's study them. Behind every major achievement, you are like stepping on the shoulders of so many more people in front of you or behind you or around you. And nothing brilliant in our day and age gets done on your own. And so I'm actually sick of the personal, individual exceptionalism myth. And I think the quote-unquote female perspective would be like, yeah, this was a team. Yes, here was my role in this team, and here's how it contributed. But I'm sort of done with the, like, celebrating these genius men who came up with these companies on their own. Half the time it's about luck and fortune, accident, and timing. And so I push back on the individual supreme accomplisher narrative.
But how about, I think you're right. We should not focus so much on individuals, and our society does it, and men have tended to benefit. But how about, I think one of the issues is just women don't take credit for things they actually really did. They undersell themselves even for just, I went into a job interview. I'm a generation older. You can tell. I went to college, with all men. I've been in all men rooms most of my life. I went into an interview at a college I really wanted to go to, and they asked me, well, I said I was a fencer. And I said I was a fencer. It turned out I went to the Junior Olympics and, came in first. But he said, "Are you good?" And what did I say? "I'm okay." Right. So there's a thing that a lot of women do, which is just you don't want to sort of promote yourself too much. You don't want to, make somebody else feel bad. I don't know what it is, but I think we've been socialized not to sell ourselves.
So I do it. When I first started my company, there would be a lot of outside people brought into meetings, people that I was meeting for the first time. And it was very easy to not sell myself, right? Not really talk about my accomplishments and maybe let some of my colleagues tell these outsiders what I had done. This didn't work. Quite frankly, for me personally, it didn't work. I was being looked over at the meetings. Not with everybody. But it happened enough that my male colleagues, my co-founders, were pointing it out. So I actually developed a tactic where when someone from outside of the company that I was meeting for the first time, I would do almost a resume list. I would immediately introduce myself, tell them that I was the founder of the company, which parts of the technology I had invented, how much of the money I had raised, so that they understood that I was someone worth talking to and listening to. And of course, this didn't have to happen for everybody that came in the room, but I just kind of over time did it automatically every time. And I think that it has, as a tactic, actually improved my ability to bring people in and have an immediate rapport with them. So I tend to agree with Erin. Just do it. I always 100% give a huge amount of credit to all of my colleagues, my collaborators, my co-founders. I'm so grateful for everything they do. And the great thing about them is that we have such a mutual respect that at first I really didn't think that this was something that would be necessary, because I respect them and their contribution and they respect me.
Okay, I have a question from the audience. It says, can you discuss the fact, or is it a fact, that it is not necessary to have a degree in CS, EE, programming, etc.? My BA is in theater, my master's is in professional writing. I've been a web producer, web content manager, web program administrator, webmaster, all in healthcare. It's been over 15 years and I'm making a stellar salary. Learn how to learn, problem solve, think outside the box, and don't be afraid to break something in order to decipher how it works.
I love that question. Can I take it?
Yes, go for it.
Hey, actually, how many of you guys are engineering degrees? Okay. So I'm a graduate of Berkeley, 94, economics. Most people won't recognize that because my entire 25 plus years in career has been in engineering. So I'm an example of somebody that can actually take a degree and take it to the next level. I'll tell you how I ended up in engineering, which is also interesting. Kudos to Cal. I actually had to, as economics, I had to take statistical analysis. I had to take some software programming. Back then it was Pascal. I don't know if any of you guys are old enough to know. But I took this computer lab. I think I was in the basement of Evans. Evans still there? Yes. Okay. And, okay, all right.
Taking the punch cards in.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now we're
I'm really older than you.
Okay. So, I was there and I took a computer, essentially a coding class. I loved it so much, I became a TA. And I actually stayed in the lab to help others learn it. And I guess I got good at it enough that when I graduated, I had a bank offer and a software engineering offer, to my surprise. And I ended up taking the software engineering one because it seemed so interesting. And that's kind of how it started. I know so many people who start a different career that can actually go into engineering. I think this is my perspective. I don't mean to simplify it, but what's really important when I hire are two things. One is the ability to analyze and be problem solver. So anybody with math, like I was economics, but I kind of focus on econometrics, which is statistical analysis of economics data. Anybody who's in that type of role, you guys already have a really good idea of how to analyze data and solve a problem. That, I think, is really important. And as a hiring manager, I've hired many people without engineering degree that can really problem solve really well. The second thing I look for is passion. And I always say I'd rather get somebody who's really passionate about what to do than somebody who's super, super smart and not passionate about what they do. Because if you love what you do, you're just naturally going to go learn and continue to grow and get better at it. And in today's world, having gone through the technology shifts of mainframe to client server to web to cloud to IoT, I kind of went through these pivots. I can tell you if there's one thing for sure in technology is that it changes. So anybody who was really, really good at something 10 years ago, if they didn't keep up, they're not having a job. So I think it's really important, no matter what the degree is, it doesn't matter so much, is that you have the curiosity to learn, passion to solve it, but make sure you have those problem-solving skills. Because if you have those data and problem-solving skills, you can apply it on different things, and you need to continuously refresh yourself.
I want to actually add to that something. We've been talking about diversity of backgrounds, different birthplace, different gender. Diversity of educational experience. I mean, I'm not, if there's a woman who comes from humanities and can hack it and has the analytical and problem-solving skills, that diversifies your community too, and that adds a new perspective. I think we have to really open up what constitutes a qualified person for some of these jobs.
There's actually some research that supports that the most innovative work happens at people who bridge structural barriers, right? Work across multiple disciplines, and so, yeah.
Okay, I have another audience question. Is there a question that you're tired of being asked as a female?
Oh, yeah. I actually emailed you this. It's, how do you handle your work-life balance?
Yeah.
It's just a strange question that only women get asked, but it's not even, it's like implicitly about being a woman, but not directly. And I mean, I think everybody's just hustling, and men never get asked this question. So,
true.
Yeah.
Good.
I feel like that's shifting, though. I don't. A lot of my male colleagues feel this too. Oh yeah, no, sorry. No, it's just I'm abruptly brought to a panel. I used to I was the president of Women in Public Policy at Goldman, and we scheduled a panel on work-life balance, and we were only able to schedule women who didn't have kids. And the panel, of course, like, Joy, you facilitate. And then the panel turned on me, and they were like, I hate this question, and this is the worst question. And I don't feel like that. I think it is an important question. And I'm sort of religious about my quiet recovery time, and then when I'm at work, I work really hard. And I think as a culture, those of us, frankly, it's an affluence thing, are more and more confronting this, regardless of background. And I personally don't think that people are productive after 60 hours a week. I think it's a myth. I think they're doing their work inefficiently and incompetently. And I think we should stop glorifying, I did 80 hours. I'm like, all the research around your brain and your stamina, it's not, I think you can get a lot of amazing work done without killing yourselves. And so I think everyone should strive for work balance. I don't know.
I'm not advocating that you shouldn't. I just don't like being asked the question as a woman.
But
because
I
I
feel
don't
like
think that men get asked this question.
But I think that's starting to shift, is my point. I think more and more men are participating in that conversation.
Okay, I think this is a really good topic, but I want to ask one last question. I keep getting cards saying I'm running out of time, and I want to get to this last question, which is, why do most women apologize so much? I won't say the first part of it. Somebody apologized on the stage, and this question asked, why did that person apologize at the end of a brilliant comment? Any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I can answer that.
I think it was just something we're trying to do. I've over the years filtered it out of my speech to the best that I can. I know I write an email and I filter it. I'm getting to the point where I don't need to do that, take out weasel words that don't mean anything, or justs and sorries and qualifications, or I think, or if I know something is, I caught myself a lot of actually in grad school saying, I think this, and I spent 2 weeks proving this. It's a fact. It's not. So just
state it.
Yeah, just state it. So it's just I mean, and I do it because I just get more credibility faster, and I can do my job better. And yeah, I think it's just a cultural thing.
I think it's a cultural thing, and I can tell you, as a Asian female,
it is a cultural thing.
Very.
It is a cultural thing. It's a fact.
It is, and being Japanese, like, I don't know if you guys can relate, but I can tell you, we're supposed to be beyond humble, like, you know, put yourself down. That's the etiquette, right? So I know that about myself, and I try to correct it a bit. And this is where it's really interesting, because I actually notice it in not just women, but men too.
Yeah.
Like British men would say, sorry, but, you know, like they do a lot of that too. And since I was just in Europe last week, we had the same conversation about it. So I actually I do think, I don't know, I haven't done factual data, but I think
You're allowed to think.
that it is a cultural thing, and it goes beyond women as gender, but more of a cultural thing with U.S. Silicon Valley culture versus the rest of the world.
Well, you know, it's interesting because, and this is, again, cultural generalizations are always really dangerous. But when I was interviewing, I did notice when I was doing work on immigrants that groups that were both equally successful, the men, because they were all men, were much more confident in one group than another. So, you know, there's one subculture that is really confident, and then another who has started as many companies. You know, I'm not going to say who they are, but it's sort of interesting. They get in the media a lot, and others that just sort of keep their heads down and are humble and are achieving tons.
Yeah.
But if so I'm sorry, but I just think it's about how you deliver it, frankly. Like, well, it's one of these things where there's nothing wrong with I'm sorry. It's like if you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying
but I'm like, I say it all the time. Like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize that. You know, and it's like use it to be snarky, if nothing else. It's just it's like we obsess about these things, and I'm not sure that it's always helpful to obsess about it. And
but I have seen people who really undermine themselves.
So I have too. And I absolutely have seen that. But to me, that's the bigger problem isn't I'm sorry. It's about general confidence building. I have been called a bulldog, a bitch, way too confident, many other things. And I've had many, many women friends be like, why are you so confident? And I don't know. But so I think it's more about the confidence and less about this phrase, I'm sorry.
I get what you're saying. I do also get tired of like these, how do we as women fit into a man's world, and why do we even have to change? Why can't they change? Why can't people just see us for what we are without having to adapt?
Well, and also you're also saying that the tone and the presentation is really the issue. That, you know, if it's a cultural thing, I mean,
there's lots of verbal tics, like, well, maybe, or, you know, I mean, to your point, you were saying like all these verbal tics sort of sneak in, and it's not that the words are bad per se. It's the delivery and the atmosphere and the sense of confidence that are actually what's
And I
at
think
issue.
what we were saying earlier is that some cultures, you get raised to be very humble and to present yourself. Even if you're an overachiever, you're very humble about your achievements.
Absolutely.
And other cultures do not.
And if I can add to that.
Although our time is up. She keeps telling me so.
Oh,
Add
sorry.
quickly.
If I can add really
Rank
quickly.
card.
I actually think that diversity is healthy. It's healthy because you need that diversity of style, and that's what our customers are. So I would leave it as, I think there were slides up there earlier, but look, at least half of the technology consumers are women. So we should represent ourselves, right? And most of the household decisions in terms of what technology is used, by the way, also made by women. So we should represent ourselves in the making of the technology if we're going to be consuming it. And guess what? There are different colors, gender, culture of people consuming it. So I think it's good to have that diversity built into the making of it, and that will only make our products actually better. And those products actually will generate more money. So this isn't just, oh, it feels good to have diversity. It's actually a really important economic factor that we need to be part of that making of the technology.
That's an awesome point to end on. I think we can all agree about that. Okay. I want to just say thanks so much to Rikky, Erin, Mayumi,
Yes.
Mayumi, yes, and Joy for being a fantastic panel. And thanks to the audience, too.
Thank you.
Thank you for moderating.